Back to the heat, we're discussing the 70th anniversary of the Allied victory over Nazi Germany. Our panel includes Jochen Hellbeck. He's Professor of History at Rutgers University and a specialist in 20th century Russia. Also with us is Nikolai Zlobin. He is a Russian scholar based here in Washington, D.C. And from London, we're now joined by Mary Jajewski. She's a columnist with The Independent of London. Let's pick it up with you, Mary, because before the break, we were talking about how history isn't even history. It's not even the past when it comes to World War II, especially Ukraine. But you've been there at these Victory in Europe Day parades in Moscow. Can you give us a sense of what they're like?
Yes. Well, these are gigantic occasions. They were gigantic occasions in Soviet times, and they're, to my mind, they're one of the few sort of days which has transferred from the Soviet period to Russia. I think that was mentioned before, but I think it's important. When you're there, the roads are cordoned off overnight, and all the military hardware sort of lines up in the side streets approaching Red Square. And as the time for the parade approaches, the tanks and all the other hardware sort of gathers together and switches on, and you have this absolutely appalling atmosphere of all the fumes as they're sitting there idling, waiting for their grand moment in Red Square. The other thing I would say is that the scale of these things and the choreography is enormously impressive. So even if you disagree with it, even if your own personal tendencies are entirely pacifist, there's something extraordinarily impressive about it. And this year, because it's the 70th anniversary, because of the context, as has been pointed out, with Ukraine, Crimea, President Putin seems determined to make a really big, especially big occasion out of it. And there's going to be, just as in Soviet times, they're going to display some new military hardware.
New tanks.
And so, just as in Soviet times then, people are going to be watching, the experts are going to be watching to see exactly what Russia has been developing.
Mary, I'm so glad you brought that up, because Russia is reinvesting in its military, even in tough economic times.
Exactly.
We're going to see new tanks,
yes.
We're going to see new guns. What's the overall impression people should take away from this? A reinvigorated Russia, harking back to Soviet Union times?
Well, to my mind, it's less about harking back to Soviet times. It's about Russia as a great power, and Russia that has some influence and forceful power in the world that is modernizing. Personally, I don't think it's back to Soviet days. I think, in a way, it's almost forward to the future of a new Russia that can take its post-Soviet position on the international stage.
Nikolai, let's bring you on that sort of post-Soviet new power Russia. President Xi Jinping of China is going to be the guest of honor. In fact, his name was banded all over the papers in Moscow today. Is this a signal of Russia's future, considering the reset button hasn't worked?
Well, at least this is how Putin would like Russians to see the event. Russia and China, two biggest power, two Eurasian powers, celebrate together. Both leaders saying good things about each other countries. And in a very bitter situation with the West, for Putin, this is a big victory. That's the biggest world leader who comes to Russia. And it's not only to celebrate victory. Russian media and Russian politicians keep telling that it also will be an opportunity to sign a lot of billion-dollar contracts. So the point is, Putin is not alone. Russia is not alone. That's the message they want to get across the street, across the globe. We're not isolated. Sanctions didn't do any bad things to us. Look, the biggest country in the world, the biggest economy in the world, China, on our side. So we should be strong. And I agree with Mary, actually. You know, for a long time, May Day parade was not a military issue. It was kind of commemorative issue, World War II veterans. Now, yes, Putin wants to show that superpower is back. Yep. And it's not only a message for the world, it's a very important message for Russian people, because for Russians, to feel that we have the biggest army, the strongest army in the world, really one of the most important things in political mentality. It's a great superpower if you have a great army. That's how Russians think.
Jochen, can I bring you in here? Are Western leaders missing an opportunity here to diffuse the situation, maybe make some sort of progress on Ukraine where you are in Kiev by not attending, considering the symbolism and the history involved here?
Well, I think that the West has made a number of mistakes regarding Russia, and I read the May parade in Russia very similar as Mary and Nikolai do. But I would add that I think there is actually a response also to Europe in these ceremonies. Putin has been knocking at Europe's doors for the last 15 years, and he's been pretty much snubbed. And so Russians feel hurt, they feel betrayed, and they are. That's one reason why there's this demonstrative turn to the east. And I think actually acknowledging the historic loss, I think would make a difference. It could be a first step to diffusing the situation. I think history is not just invoked as propaganda; it's very real. On the other hand, I think also that if you look at Russia and Ukraine in dialogue or sort of together, you see how the celebrations in Ukraine are very much staged as a anti-celebration of the May 9 parade in Moscow. So the emphasis really is on May 8, is on today. Tonight there will be a commemoration of the first minute of peace to really bring Ukraine's calendar into Europe. I mean, they're basically reading May 9 as a Soviet invention, and they want to Europeanize, so they're not really telling the people that it's just because of the time shift and the time difference between Berlin and Moscow that the event falls on May 9. And so it's a symbolic innovation on the calendar, which is very much something that revolutionary regimes do. So there is a real revolution going on and a revolutionary revisionism of history. And the emphasis is all on peace and understatement as opposed to the military glory in Russia. But there is, as I said before, the subtext of war. So soldiers fighting at the Eastern Front, fighting the separatists, are brought in, and that gives it a very peculiar touch.
Nikolai, you wanted to pick up on that?
Yeah, I want to say about mistakes made by Western leaders. I think it is a mistake not to come to Moscow. And not because I understand they don't like Putin, they don't like Russian politics, but that's what West did during Cold War. They were always on the side of average Russian. Now the problem is that you're not insulting Putin by not going there, you're insulting Russians. And I think this bitter feeling towards Western Europe will stay in Russia for a long time, because this is a celebration, not Putin's celebration, celebration of average Russian citizen. It's very popular, loving by most of Russians, V-Day, Victory Day, and I think this public opinion will be very badly hurt by this Western leaders not coming to Moscow. Not politics, but attitude towards the West.
I just want to bring Mary in here. The narrative is very different in the West. President Barack Obama just issued a statement commemorating the 400,000 lives that were lost by Americans. A huge number of people. They didn't join the war till late on. And in the West, the narrative is that they won the war. Is it time to change that? And how can that affect the future in terms of this new global order that has not yet emerged?
Well, I think that it's going to be impossible, really, to change the narrative and to play the 8th or 9th of May as though it was something different from a victory, because that's how it's been seen now for more than for 70 years in Europe. And indeed, it's those ceremonies that are actually playing less than 100 yards from where I'm sitting in London today. And there may be some weakening of the sentiment with the passing of the generations. I mean, I think that 70 years is probably a key anniversary, because you're at the last limits, really, of living memory. So I think that the almost triumphalism that sometimes attends these anniversaries in Western Europe, I think this may start to fade. But the idea that Russia would, as it were, be brought into those commemorations, and that what Russia would see as its due would be recognized as Russia sacrificed so much in their narrative, really to save Europe, and that the freedom that's been enjoyed in Europe for the last 70 years is, as much as anything, and perhaps more than anything, as seen from Moscow, is because of the sacrifice of 25,000 Soviet citizens.
And just pick up also on one of the points you made, which is about the sacrifice that people feel is not being represented in history, the Russians. The Chinese feel exactly the same thing. They suffered very heavily at the hands of the Japanese. They feel that history hasn't reflected that. As we move on, is it actually time to write a different history, Johan?
Well, we'll see how it works. I'm pessimistic and optimistic at the same time. I'm looking at the Ukrainian-Russian standoff, and I'm feeling quite pessimistic because it's heating up, and I feel we're in it for quite a long time. My optimism stems from, the belief that politics can change everything. So that if it's just a matter of the political will to change essentially historical narratives, and so I have a slight hopeful. I see a slightly hopeful sign in the fact that there's one Western leader who has departed from the script, and it's really a diplomatic challenge, a major challenge, how to respond to Putin's invitation to come to Moscow in 2015. And I think that Angela Merkel, I don't agree with many of her politics, especially in Europe, but she got it right this time. So her foreign minister Steinmeier went to Volgograd, the former Stalingrad, yesterday to commemorate the gigantic battle, the turning point of the war. And she's coming to Moscow the day after tomorrow. So she's skirting the parade, but she will attend the grave of the unknown soldier with Putin and honor the dead. And I think that is the most important gesture. So my hope is that something lasting will come out of that, and that the memory of World War II and the Soviet losses and the Soviet victory in World War II will not be forgotten.
Nikolai, just a last word on Angela Merkel doing what she's done compared to the other European leaders. Germany and Russia cooperating, negotiating after decades of distrust?
Well, I think it's very important for Russians to see that German leader comes to Russia, first of all, to recognize the sacrifice, and second of all, Russians see Germany as a major partner in Europe for Russia. Putin sees Germany as a major partner for Russia in Europe, and if Russia and Germany can work things together, can work out all these differences, then Russians will feel like the rest of Europe will be on the same way. We can do the things with Europeans, we can do business with Europeans, and we can do business with Germany. If Merkel would not come to Moscow day after tomorrow, that would be a different story. But I agree, I think she did the very right thing.